Yeah. I now call the October 31st, 2019 Board of Commissioners work session to order. But before we get started, I want to let you know that we have canceled the special call meeting today, so we will go straight into the work session. Item number one is we're going to call on Jennifer Corcione. I'm sorry, I forgot to ask you how to pronounce your name. And she's going to give us an update on Kathy.
All right, thank you. Thank you for hosting me this afternoon. I know it's Halloween, and I'm going to be cognizant of that and try to be timely and get out of here quick so everybody can get to their friends and families. But for those of you that I've not met, my name is Jennifer Corcione, and I'm the Executive Director of Community Action for Improvement, otherwise known as Kathy. We are a 501c3 nonprofit, but we also have special designation, legal designation from the federal government to operate an action agency. And that makes us part of a very large network in the country. We're America's #1 anti-poverty organization. Community Action Partnership hosts thousands of action agencies across the nation. Here in Georgia, we operate with 19 other agencies. I believe you have in front of you a copy of a PowerPoint. If you could just briefly reference that. On page 2, you'll see there a state map, and you'll see circled is Kathy, and that's the area and the counties that we serve. So we are legally mandated to serve certain counties, and the 5 counties that we're mandated to serve are circled there for you, Carroll being one of them. We've operated in this area since 1966, so we've been around a while, been through quite a few changes, and my leadership term started about 2.5 years ago, so I'm sort of fresh off the boat there, and I'm excited to make some further changes. But action agencies are really part of a unique network that gets federal funding. We receive the Federal Community Services Block Grant, as well as some other federal streams of funds, and we're legally mandated to receive those. So there's no other agencies in the state of Georgia that can receive those federal block grant funds, and so that's really important to realize that, because those funds are meant to be spent and decisions made at the local level, and that gives us a unique perspective when we're dealing with federal dollars. Down on the 3rd page there, a little bit about what we do. You'll see there that our mission is to enhance the quality of life of individuals and families by providing services and resources that will facilitate the building of self-esteem and self-sufficiency through the active total involvement of the total community. That's been our mission since 1966, and we're right now going through a mission review, and we're going to be updating that and adding in some more language that specifically references poverty, as well as maybe some of the housing initiatives that we are into. The programs that we run primarily that would benefit the constituents of Carroll County are the Low-Income Home Energy Assistance Program, and that's otherwise known as LIHEAP. You'll find that when we're dealing with federal funds, there's lots of acronyms and shortcuts, so if you get confused, let me know. But that Low-Income Home Energy Assistance Program is something that we're probably most well known for. Last season, we administered about $2.7 million of funds, and I'll speak to how much of those funds went to Carroll County in just a moment. We also operate our home weatherization program, and that is a really impactful program where we go into homes, low-income homes, usually senior citizens, and we make energy efficiency improvements. Sometimes that results in a whole new HVAC system, sometimes it's just caulking and plugging up drafts, but it's really impactful because the research has shown that people can reduce their energy burdens or their power bills by 37% by just some of the basic changes that we make to the home. So we're real proud of that, and we've been doing that for 3 decades now. And we also operate our homeless prevention and housing stability program. It's a tongue twister. And in that program, we offer financial support such as rental assistance, deposits when someone's trying to get into a home, of course, all under the umbrella of housing stability. We also offer some homeless services. We don't do a lot of emergency shelter stays in this region because there's very few. I know we've got a shelter here in Carroll County, but there's just very few in this region, so we end up spending a lot of that money on hotel stays. But we do that as well as part of our housing program. If you'll flip over to the next page, you can see there our GuideStar.org entry or record on GuideStar.org, and that is a federal database of information about all nonprofits. Most funders, certainly any federal funders or foundation funds that want to be donated to us, I would expect most of those people look us up on GuideStar.org. That's a database that houses all of our information, including our audits, our tax returns, and you can see there that we've achieved our gold seal of transparency. And that's real important to me in my first couple of years with CAFE. We really want to do a better job at transparency, letting the public know exactly where those funds are going, how much of those funds are spent. And if you do look us up on GuideStar.org, you'll see our most recent financial audit, and we were real proud of that audit this year because it proved that we spend about 97 cents on every dollar for direct client services. That leaves very little amount of money for overhead and buildings and light bills of our own. So we have really put almost all of our funding into direct client services for the region. You'll see there are neighborhood service centers. We've got 4 at the moment. There's 1 in each county. We do have a small office here in Carrollton that we are renting presently, and by using money to rent buildings, it takes away client benefit funds. So we are actually on this search for donated or co-op space or anything like that that can help us reduce that rental charge. So I may be following up with some of you if you have any ideas, but the better we can make the footprint in the county, the easier it is for the residents to come and receive the services. And again, we do have a small office that we're renting, but I am looking for something different, so don't be surprised if I call on you. Just flip through just a moment to tell you exactly what that low income home energy assistance program is. That is targeted primarily to seniors, but definitely for low-income families, and we give a stipend of $350 to $400 for a one-time stipend on their power bill, and that usually hits around the winter season. This past year I was able to write for and receive an additional $500,000 in cooling money that we put into play in the spring, so that allowed clients to have some relief for their power bills in the winter and then again in the spring, and we'll be able to repeat that this season. It really does go a long way, especially for senior citizen homes when they're on fixed incomes. To get that burst or that influx onto their power bill that gives them a credit is really something that we have clients of ours that tell us they just wait every year for that because that provides them a little relief, and we love those stories. Home weatherization I've spoken to you about, but it actually reduces those energy burdens, and it's become one of the favorites. Unfortunately, we only do about 35 houses a year with that money, and that has to be spread among the 5 counties that we serve. But we are actually seeking extra grants for that, and we just were recently rewarded another $300,000 for that, so we're going to continue to try to increase the amount of homes that we repair. This past year I was able to write into the block grant to do some minor home repairs before we do the weatherization. If you can imagine, some of the older homes are in such poor condition that we're unable to weatherize. So we used some funds from another area, stacked it with this program, and we're able to do some minor home repairs, then go in and weatherize the home. And it's been really impactful. We were able to do a couple of roofs for people and some other things that led them into that weatherization program. So it's really good. Of all of our federal stream of funds, this is probably Congress's favorite. I think most all of our programs are continually on the chopping block in Congress, but this one happens to be a favorite. It's funded out of the Department of Energy, and no one's ever told me this, but I believe that they like this because they can see those tangible benefits. It's like they can see the work that's being done to improve the home, they can see the change in the power bill, so that research has been done, and I think that's why Congress loves that program. Homeless prevention and housing stability is what I described. We do case management with that. Of course, we do comprehensive case management with almost all of our services except the energy assistance. That's sort of just a one-time stipend. But with our homeless prevention and housing stability, we're bringing clients in, we're putting them through some financial literacy steps. some budgeting. They're going through intensive case management. We're linking them to other resources and mainstream benefits where we can. And then we're also providing that financial assistance to either help them deal with arrearage or a security deposit to get in somewhere. And a new leg of this program that we've just started this year is our 502 Direct Loan Program, and that's a loan program from the USDA Rural Development, and it's been a package that's been out there for a very long time, but very few people process those loans. And what they are, it's a loan for low to very low income people to allow them home ownership. It makes it possible for someone making $9 an hour to own a home. The reason they're able to do that is because there's some very extensive calculations that put into play payment subsidies for the person, sometimes interest rates as low as 1% or nothing, and no down payments. And so through all those fancy calculations, they come up with a way for a low or very low income person to own a home. And it's really, really going to be something new to this region, and we're so excited. We have worked for years with conventional lenders to try to do loan programs and home ownership programs, but I've yet to meet a conventional lender that wants to give someone payment subsidies and 0% interest. So you just can't compare the two. So this package and this type of a loan is specifically designed for our target audience. So now we are certified packagers for all of the counties that we serve, and we're really excited to roll that out. It gives a person struggling with housing stability one step closer to property ownership, and we really want to invest in that. If you'll flip with me to the Carroll County overview, you'll see the benefits paid and the clients served there. It's pretty self-explanatory. Just in the last year or so, we have spent roughly $687,000 in Carroll County. Now those are direct service numbers. My overhead, our staff time, my light bill, all those things that happen with the administration are not included in these numbers. So this is direct funds that went into the hands, into the economy in Carroll County. So we're very proud of that. We're going to continue to seek more grant opportunities. We're going to continue to apply for other federal funds. But you can see there that we have an investment in this county. We are continually trying to raise those numbers. We're serving right now about 1,800 families or households in Carroll County. You can see the numbers there. Looks like we've done 6 houses in the last year and a half for weatherization, which is great. Over $645,000 spent on the low-income utility assistance. So when you look at those numbers, I wish there was someone from Carroll EMC here. They get most of that. But it's interesting to see how much impact a small nonprofit can really have. And so I wanted to come and share these figures with you and let you know that we are still here. We are always looking for new opportunities to serve the community. We actually, for those of you that know our history, we operated the Head Start program in this county for decades, many decades. In 2015, the grant was lost due to noncompliance. Since then, we have completely changed the entire executive management team at CAFE. We've also changed quite a few things on our board. Here with me this afternoon is our newly elected president of the board, Brandolyn Marinko. She is the housing manager over at your housing authority and has put a lot of work in to our board in the last few years, and she was elected in September to lead the charge now. And also from your community, Dr. Winston Tripp, who runs your sociology department at the university. He is also our vice chair and has been newly elected to that position. So 2 of Carroll County's finest are heading our board of directors, and that is a surefire way to make sure some of this funding or more of this funding gets steered to your county. So we're very appreciative to have Brandolyn supporting our efforts. We have a lot of new things on the horizon. She and I have met several times about things that she wants to see for Carroll County, things that she demands to see for Carroll County. So I am going to try to lead that charge with her. We do have openings on our board. Unfortunately, the Carroll County seats are filled at the moment. But that doesn't mean that there won't be one coming up next year. One of the milestones that we met this year was we, for the first time since 1966, changed our bylaws and instituted term limits. So that's something really new for our board. I think it felt strange to some members, but we're refreshing things, and we're coming back into this century, and we're going to try to do a better job and be better stewards of all the funds that we receive. You'll see on there in closing just a quick shot of how to refer a client to us. That's usually for a referral agency. If you yourselves know of a family or someone struggling, you can contact me directly. My information is on this back sheet. We do most of our appointments on our online system on our website, but if you have a referral, if you'll just shoot me an email or give me a quick call or let Brandolyn know, we can certainly take care of that. That referral form is primarily for agencies. You know I went fast, but I wanted to be fast today. Any questions or anything I can answer for you?
Now, I will say, Brandolyn served on our task force for the Rural Transit Program, so we are, you and I and the rest of us are very lucky that she is
Yes,
the
we
chair.
are. We feel so blessed.
Thank you.
It was I had to do a little bit of talking her into it, let her know I'm going to support you and do all the admin that I have to do for you. But to have her and Dr. Tripp elected to lead this organization just speaks volumes about the county. So we appreciate their participation. I hope to be able to come back and give you more frequent updates about the services. I guess that's it. There's no other questions. All right, thank you. Have a nice Halloween.
Thank you. For those of you who are listening, listening online, well, I hope you're all listening. We are aware we have an echo, and we are working on it. It may not be fixed during this particular meeting, but we are aware of it. I'm going to do a little bit of rearranging just for the simple fact that it is Halloween, and some of the ones on our agenda, I would like for them to be able to get home to their families to go trick-or-treat. So the next thing we're doing is we're moving on to the review and discussion of items for our Board of Commissioner meeting. I'll find it on here. So I'm going to skip down the financial session, and we're going to skip Alicia Searcy for the moment and go straight to Matt Wyndham. So he is 9.2 on your agenda to go over the Carroll County Water Authority to review their request.
Good evening, Chairman, Commissioners. Thank you all for the opportunity to come speak to you tonight regarding the Carroll County Water Authority and our planned expansion of the Snake Creek Water Treatment Plant, and our need for a GFA loan to fund that, and how you can participate to assist us with that. So I do have some handouts that I'd like to pass out, if it's okay.
More reading, Steve. And Steve was just saying earlier, this is a big packet he's been reading, and he's going to read a second time. So I just
Well, the information that's going around will be much more just kind of visual, and just kind of walk through my topics here. So, again, thank you for the opportunity, and I want to let you know how important you are to the Water Authority Board and our operation. You appoint my board of directors, and it's very important we have a great board, as you can imagine here, as you serve on your board, and to make sure we have good business-minded men and women on that board, and we do, and I appreciate your help in that in the past and as we go forward. So real quick, if you'll notice on that handout, the packet, the first thing is just want to give you a visual of our existing water treatment plant. That's on page 2. And what you'll see there is just real quickly an existing water treatment plant that was built back in 2000. We expanded that plant in 2004. And that plant is served raw water from the Snake Creek Reservoir, which is located north of Whitesburg. We treat the water here. We have a raw water storage pond there in case we have power outages from the plant. We treat there roughly about 5 million gallons per day right now, and our peaking days are over 7, which is why I'm here talking about expanding the plant. Real quickly from here, though, just to give you a quick overview of our system. We have the clear well here, you see at the bottom. That's where once we treat the water, it goes to that clear well. We store it there and then pump it from there to the distribution system. Our system is about 800 miles throughout the county. We have 9 storage tanks throughout the county, and we have 9 storage tanks and 8 booster pump stations throughout the county. We're currently expanding one of our tanks, building actually a new tank north of Temple. At the Rainy Road tank site north of Temple, we're building another tank there. That itself is about $1.3 million. We just added another booster pump station at around $500,000, and then we're doing line extensions throughout the county, and done about 5 miles over the last 2 years. So we fund those type of improvements through cash flow. We recognize we need to do those things through cash flow, but then we have need for long-term debt for like a water plant expansion or a new reservoir, things of that nature, and that's what I'm here to talk to you about today. If you flip to the next page, you'll see that the items in dark blue there will be items that we're changing at the water plant. We're doing this to expand the water plant from a capacity standpoint because we're seeing customer growth at a steady rate of about 1.4% per year. But we're really seeing our peaking days go up, and that's the hardest demand to meet, whether it's power or electrical, it's your peaking days. And so with the expansion, we'll be able to meet our peak days and also improving our operational ability there to make sure we can treat water no matter the quality that comes in. Even in a large rains event, we can make sure we treat it well. So we began the process a number of years ago thinking about we need to expand the plant. We started back in early 18 looking for an engineering firm to help us. We did a competitively selected Krebs Engineering to do the design back in the summer of 18, and have worked with them since then to design the plant. It's currently out for bid. We advertised on October 17th, and now we'll receive bids on November 21st. And the cost estimate for that plant expansion right now is $28.5 million is what the estimated cost is, and we'd be looking to go construction the first quarter of next year and then completed by the third quarter of 2022. So as we saw that coming down the road, we realized we need to get funding for that. And so GEFA, which is the Georgia Environmental Finance Authority, we worked with many times in the past, is generally the preferred manner for utilities to go to for funding. They have competitive rates, although a lot of conditions go along with them. And so back in February, we applied for that loan, and then they asked for a letter of support from this board back in March. And so Commissioner Chambers was serving as the chairman at that time, and it came to him, and a number of you on the board supported that project and sent that letter out. And then we were approved for that loan in August of 2019. It's a $25 million loan. That's the maximum amount we can ask for in any one given year through that loan program. 1.86% over a 20-year period, so great terms that are included in the loan. Some of the conditions are, as you can imagine, it's got state and federal money, so there's a lot of conditions that we have to meet. One of them is we have to give our rate setting authority. They have to give GEFA the ability to set our rates if we did not do a good job at setting them ourselves. So GEFA could actually tell us how you need to raise your rates. Of course, they never have, and as I'll show you in a minute, we're well above any minimum kind of standards that GEFA requires from us. Another issue or a condition they require is why I'm here tonight is they require an environmental facilities agreement between Carroll County and Carroll County Water Authority, and that's basically pledging that Carroll County government would back the loan payments if we weren't able to make the loan payments. And obviously, we've got a long history of making those with GEFA, and we're set to do that. But if I was you, that's the question I'd ask. How are you going to pay for this? And so, just real quickly, I don't want to take too much time, but we do a cost of service study. We did one back in 12 and 15 and 19. It takes a look at, hey, what do our rates need to be to pay for our long-term capital improvements, to pay for our operational cost, and then we make sure we're charging enough to our customers to do that, while at the same time not overcharging. And so we've been successful through that process, and we look at cash flow demands such as the tanks I mentioned versus long-term debt. And we've actually, each year, the last 5 years, we've invested over $2 million in cash just in expansion, new tanks, new pump stations, new water lines, etc. And our philosophy has been over time to make small incremental increases on rates, try not to have that rate shock that customers don't like to see. And we've done that. I mean, we've gone up $1 last year, $1 this year, and we see that kind of being the policy and procedures we go forward. We also recognized back in 15 we saw the plant expansion coming. We refunded a 2015 bond issue, refinanced it, and we actually paid down the debt sooner. So now with this loan coming on in 22, we've got about $1 million of existing debt that'll be coming off. So we're going to match those times up roughly within the same year. And so really our only additional cost is going to be $400,000 a year for the additional principal payments, which is a relatively small amount in the overall scheme that we have. You have there a press release where we received the loan. just showed you that there. And then you see, just quickly, a water rate analysis. And I'll show you this not to say that anybody on this graph is too high or too low. Each water system is different. And you need to design your rates based on where you are and what your vision is and what you need for your system. But what you'll see there is, on that first graph, all the green lines are relatively local water utilities, and the yellow line or bar graph is where the Carroll County Water Authority rates are, and the blue is average. So you can see we're on the bottom half of that graph. And again, it doesn't mean that the ones that are above that are any worse shape or better shape. It just means this is where we line up and from the customers around us. The next graph you'll see is just looking at water rates compared to those that are outside city limits. A lot of cities charge rates differently for inside city limits versus outside, and there's some justification for doing that. And so we align more with the ones that are outside. We excluded the inside city limit rates here, and you can just see again we're on the lower part of that graph and have right around $40 a month for the average water bill at 6,000 gallons. And then lastly, next to last, we've got the fixed charge coverage ratio. So what this is basically our debt coverage ratio, and the GFA loan requires a 1.05 times. And you can see back in 2010 we were above that at 1.3, and we've been historically above that, and here the last 4 years we've been no lower than 2.16. So we're well positioned to fund the debt that we're asking for through GFA. And then we also did receive a bump up in our Moody's rating this year. They bumped us up from an A1 to a AA3. And so that was a outside source looking at us and recognizing that our finances are strong and able to take on some additional debt. So I don't want to take up too much time, but certainly need your support. By using the GFA loan, it saves our ratepayers money. If we had to go to another source like the bond market, it would be more expensive, and we had to pass that on, unfortunately. So we feel comfortable taking the debt on. We think the Water Authority is managed well, from the directors down to the staff level. Y'all have been a great help to us in the past. I know we've got some appointments that are coming up. I'd ask you to continue to look for business-minded men and women on our board, and we've got a great board now. And with that, I'd open it up for any questions you might have.
I've got one.
Go ahead, Ernie.
Does the interest rate that you mentioned, Matt, reflect the AA3 new rating from Moody's?
Yeah, the actual interest rate we get from GFA is set by the state's bond rating. And so it's not related to ours. The 1.86 rate is from GFA's, and it converts to the state of Georgia's rate. If we went to the bond market, we'd be looking at something more in the mid-2s or a little bit higher, which is why it'd be more expensive for us than going with the GFA loan.
Okay.
Mr. Wyndham, I've got a question for you. Assuming that we approve this, could you give us an annual summary report at the end of your fiscal year before you start a new fiscal year, just to let us know this is the evaluation our board has specifically looked at with reference of repaying this, and this is where we think we're in line, or here's the adjustments we're making for the new year. So as we go along, not a 60-page document, just a couple of pages that allows us to see every year your board's mindset and the adjustments maybe that you're making. So each year that we're on track of knowing that, hey, you're right where you need to be in repaying.
We can. I mean, we do. We get our financial audit, which includes that data, and that becomes a part of your audit as well, as a subcomponent of the government. So we'll continue to provide that. We can provide other reporting that you might desire or want. I'd love to come before you once a year and just give you an update. But sure, we can do that. We just need to get specific. What would you actually want to see, and we can provide it. It's just a matter of whatever format you want to see it in.
Thank you.
Thank you. How many years is this?
It's a 20-year note.
20-year note.
Yes.
And what do you think would be, with this seeing a 1.4% growth now, which means there's been about 21% growth since that plant was upgraded in 2004. Is this going to suffice for, say, a 15, 20-year period, or?
That's a good question. I mean, at the current growth rate, it would last for a while. And you know, 1.4%, I hadn't run that total, honestly, but yeah, it'd probably last a 20-year note period, I'd imagine. We are working on other projects. This would take care of us from a water treatment plant standpoint for probably a decade or two, certainly at the current growth rate. We are looking for additional water supplies. I've been working on those for 16 years. And we're getting closer on that. So we know our next challenge is, this was a big one for us to expand the water plant, take care of our immediate need so that we can serve the potable water needs of the county for years to come. The next big challenge is, we've been working on it again for a while, is additional raw water source. And that will hopefully be coming on in the next decade to again position us to go further. But yes, this will last us easily 10 years, 20 years. And we are designing some aspects into it now in this expansion that will make the next expansion easier, more cost effective.
One caveat, I think, to that, Commissioner Reynolds, is you take the city of Villa Rica. I know that what they're purchasing from you varies depending on if they're in a drought or whatever they've got going on inside the city. But the reality is, I think they're continuing to look for their own water source, maybe at some point to increase the capacity that they can turn over in-house. And so the ratio of growth may not be consistent with where they're at right now. As they continue to grow, if they can find another water source, they may be lessening the burden that they're placing on you. Is that correct?
It could be, right. We're mostly residential customers. The next largest segment is our municipal customers, Villa Rica being certainly a lot of time the largest. I mean, they're pulling around a little bit over 1 million gallons per day from us now, but that may be down to 400,000, 200,000, depending on the day and the time of the year. So, right, if Villa Rica pulled off their demand from us, what it would really do is on those peak days. A lot of times they'll pull from us on the peak days more than the average day, so it can pull down our peak some. So if they were to do that, then it would just simply take what the investment we're making and extend that period of time that it'd be serviceable, or before we had to expand again.
I imagine with this capacity, maybe you could do more for some places that might not be served quite as well now, like Whitesburg area maybe.
Well, I mean, yeah, we serve almost. I mean, we're interconnected with all the cities in the county. So anytime a city, we sell to all of them except on a regular basis, except Bowden and Carrollton, just because they have their own plants. So yes, it positioned us to again meet the demand as we're seeing it. And we were over 7 MGD demand 11 times this year. And even though our plant's rated at 8, there is some loss in production there because you have to backwash the filters and things. So when you get above 7, you're basically at your full capacity. And so we know for the next few years we'll be there, and then we'll have some additional freeboard, if you will, on our capacity there.
So, Commissioners, I'm going to be asking to put this on a consent agenda. So what you'll really be voting on is the 2019 Environmental Facilities Agreement between Carroll County Water Authority and then the resolution of Carroll County Board of Commissioners. So if you have any questions for Stacy right now, she had sent some of these out. She has reviewed all the documents. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm presenting the overall project, but the real ask is to authorize approval to execute that agreement. That's correct.
I have no problem placing it on the consent agenda.
Yeah.
Thank you, Matt.
Okay. Thank you all. Happy Halloween.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to skip around again to 10.2. I'll call on our county engineer, Brian Kent, to present a request for special street light tax district for the Phase 3 of the Harlan Trace subdivision.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, I only come before you very rarely to discuss special tax districts, so that's why I'm here tonight with some new members to, if there's any questions about a special tax district. This is about a year ago I did Phase 2 for Harlan Trace. This is Phase 3. There should be a Phase 4 probably in the next year. But what is happening with this, Carroll County requires street lights on subdivisions that have 25 or more lots. Because we require street lights, we require special tax districts to essentially pay for those street lights. There's 3 ways to do a special tax district. One, this is the easiest way. The developer comes forward and is developing a subdivision and is the sole lot owner and petitions to have a special tax district created. The second way is for an existing subdivision to request a special tax district. They come to me generally, and I have to have 75% of the lot owners have to be in agreement to create a special tax district before I can come to you for that petition. There's also a 2-year deposit that has to get paid for those street lights, and we move forward from there. The third way is you as the Board of Commissioners can create a special tax district in the health, welfare, and safety of the community. We've done that one other time, kind of outside the box thinking, in a community north of here. So it's pretty generic. I'll come forward with that on you, but I do have 2 things while I've got you to just for information purposes. Over the course of a couple of years, last couple of years, the way Carroll County collects those money is $40 a flat rate on the property taxes. It's collected at the end of the year. That's why the 2-year deposit is paid for by the developer and by other means, because we start collecting the property taxes at the end of the year. So that money, that deposit that comes in actually helps pay for Carroll County to pay that light bill. In the past 3 years, there's been state legislation that's been proposed that would make any additional fees on property taxes illegal. Past 3 years, I've been asked to provide that information. The information I provide is Carroll County has 26 subdivisions. We have 886 lots in those subdivisions. We have 335 lights. So we are providing a good service that we're actually paying with that service. Georgia Power has 15% of the coverage. Greystone has 8% of the coverage. EMC has about 77% of the coverage. So we are continuing to move forward with that. I'm just throwing it out there that there is state legislation that might make us change how we do business in that regard. The second item is we've been doing the $40 flat rate since this inception, 2001. We started actually collecting on these in 2003 with the subdivision regulations. So we've been doing this at a $40 flat rate, unchanged rate, for a number of years now, and there could be a possibility with utility costs increasing that we are looking at sometime in the future having to increase that. Douglas County does something very similar to us, and they were into the $60 flat rate some years ago. So right now we're still fairly solvent with it. When I check the accounts, and we seem to be drawing interest on it and making our way with it. But I'm just throwing it out as information purposes. This is a tax, and we could be looking at having to increase that at some time in the future. But other than that, I have nothing else to add to it. Are there any questions?
I'll be asking to put this on the consent agenda too, so if you have any questions for Brian. Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, I'm going to try and get back on schedule here. We'll go to the financial session, and I'm going to call on our Finance Director, Alicia Searcy, to review our financial recap for September of 2019. So this is 9.1, the financial recap for September 2019.
Well, for the first quarter of fiscal year 2020, are we recapping 2019, or are we starting into September?
I have no, we're doing 9.1, the financial recap September 2019.
Okay. So we continue to see a growth in revenue through the first quarter. Our revenues were up about $900,000 over last year. So we can continue to see growth in our lost income and in our TBAT. It's very early in the game for our property tax, but we did see our first multi-million-dollar property tax check this week of $2 million. So that helps in our cash flow situation. All of our departments are staying pretty well within budget. I've reviewed those with the chairman, and any line items that we have questions on, we're going to be addressing with the department heads. We're going to try to be proactive and make sure that they have a plan to keep everything within budget, and if they don't keep a line item in budget, then they've got a plan of how they're going to take care of that within their departmental budget. But so far, we're pretty well on track with all the departments. We have paid out a majority of our insurance premiums, so our risk management line is expended more than the other parts of the budget, which you would expect to be about 25% through the first quarter. Our audit is about 45% paid, so that line item also is above, but those are annual expenditures, so once they're paid, we won't see those recurring throughout the year. We do continue to see a growth in building permits, and our insurance premium tax came in October. That's not a part of this report, but it was above our budgeted numbers too. So I think we're on a good start for the fiscal year 2020.
Thank you for this new way of doing. Before it was always just kind of black and white, a lot of lines tightly together. So I really do like this new format with the different highlighting and how each of the categories you can see where the expenses go. So thank you for working on this.
You're welcome.
Any questions for Alicia on the end of September?
Madam Chair, I'll probably have some questions on Tuesday. I've spent a considerable amount of time going through the budget amendment, and there was a lot of information to go through, and I've been working with Cersei on some of it, but I'll try to answer most of it between now and Tuesday on these on the SPLOST and the general fund. But like I said, I've spent so much time on the other that I just want to be up front. I may have some questions on these on Tuesday.
Okay, so this is, well, we're just right now doing the September 2019 financial recap.
That's what I'm stating.
Okay.
I just, it's totally separate than the budget amendments, and there was so much information that's where I've spent the majority of my time.
Okay, I just want to make sure we're not on the next line yet. Okay, so no further questions on 9.1 then? Okay, so we will now go to 9.2, and Alicia's going to go over our proposed budget amendment for the year of 2019. I will say, George, Tommy, you have to admit it's always been a one-line item, and we've just made the adjustment. So working with Alicia, I thought it was real important for the three of us, as well as all the new commissioners, that we have a really detailed list of where all the budget amendments were going. So it is a big packet even for those of us. So I hope it was put to you very well so you can understand it. While it was a lot of information, I hope it was very clear. So at this point, I'll let Alicia go over it or see if there's any questions for any of you. But we'll, Alicia.
Okay. I'm going to give an overview, and I'm not going to go through each individual line item that we made an amendment to, because you have an explanation in front of you. If you do have questions regarding that explanation, I'm happy to try to address those. The budget amendment, as we are showing it, is showing an increase in the budget of $2,066,269 to get a final amended budget of $52,518,446. In general, we addressed the line items that increased. There were some line items that decreased, but we did not take those into consideration in the amendment. Just for the sake of time and the fact that we did have the revenue to cover those the increases that we have shown. At the end of the year, we had a revenue surplus of $3,540,487,000. We increased our cash year over year from June 2018 to June 2019 of $3.4 million. We also increased our fund balance during that same period to $2.5 million. That's an incredible increase. I mean, that's very solid. In addition to doing that, we spent $572,000 out of the general fund on bonuses, and then we spent another $827,000 on capital purchases that we made out of the general fund. So even with those purchases, we still increased our fund balance by $2.5 million. So I think the board as a whole did a very good job of being fiscally responsible with the money of the taxpayers of Carroll County.
Yeah, I'd like to say ACCG usually recommends our reserve fund is between 2 and 3 months. And when we calculated it yesterday, we are at 3.15 months in reserves. So thank you to those of you on the board. I know for the last several years we've worked really, really hard, and thank you to the department heads and the elected officials who have stayed within budget, kept their budgets really tight over the last few years. But for us to realize 3.5 at the end of this year and be able to roll it into reserve is really, really good. So thank you, and I appreciate all the help from those besides the board.
I think that's important because we are, right now we're economically we're in good times, and I think it's important to build up that rainy day fund because at some point in time we may not have the flexibilities that we have right now, and so kudos to the people who made the decisions to do that, because I think that's very important. One other point I wanted to make was that even our budgeted expenditures were $50,313,500 for the 2019 budget. And if you take out the money that we spent on the bonuses and the capital expenditures, our total expenditures at the end of the year were $49,867,000, which our actual expenditures would have been $445,000 under what our budget was. So additionally, in addition to having surplus in revenue, we also watched our expenditures and came in under budget overall. Now, obviously, there's some line items that were over budget, and that's what this amendment's addressing. But that's another positive for fiscal year 2019.
Are there any questions for Alicia?
Just a couple of comments. Like I said, I spent a good bit of time with Alicia this afternoon going over some of these. On page 2, some of the numbers at the bottom are going to change a little bit. It's not off by much. Annual expenditures netted by bonus and capital expense should be $49,867,594. That very bottom number should be $445,906 instead of $446,026. Alicia talked about the health insurance, going up in a good bit of the departments, but also leveling out because we had several that they went down as well, even though that wasn't reflected. The tax assessors, their salary lines did reduce even with the employee bonuses. Nearly everyone else, their salary lines went up. The district attorney, and I think Alicia's still going to, she answered most of my question, but essentially we're giving the district attorney one lump sum of money, but yet we went back in and are amending the salary line item, which, can you explain some of that? I'm still not 100% certain on that, but it just was brought to my attention just because.
Yes, we contract with the district attorney for a specific amount per year. When I receive that invoice, I allocate those expenses based on an allocation that we've used over the years. And for the 2019 budget, the salary amount for the district attorney was reduced by $2,000 for some reason, and I don't have a good explanation for that. So that's why we have a need for an amendment of $2,000 in the salary. But really, we just allocate that money for those expense lines just so we can kind of see how that breaks out for the district attorney. But we don't pay them. We paid them the exact same amount of money in 2019 that we paid them in 2018. So there was no variance in the amount that we paid to them. There was just a variance in the amount that was budgeted for them. And so that's why we're having to amend.
In the probate court, it talks about the program expense was offset by revenue in prior years. I think if you look at that, it's going from 1,000 up to 26,000, but you were stating that there was some state law. If you look at that, it makes it look like probate court went crazy on expenditures, and I don't think that's the case.
No, that's not the case. What we have been offsetting the expense by money that we have been reimbursed for mental court advocates. And this year, the state wanted to see all the money that's coming in to the general fund reported as revenue. So it made us gross up the revenue and gross up the expense. We had another line item that we had to do that with, and that was the excise tax, where the money that we were paying out to the cities for the excise tax used to go against the expense. Now they want that expense grossed up and report the money coming in as a revenue. So it's really just an accounting change. The net of the two is exactly the way it's always been.
And on the corner, and this is something I need to ask him, and it's a very minimal amount of money, but if you look on page 7, we took down the autopsy expense down by $1,600, which is nearly 20% of the budget, but it went up by $700 on his support supplement. But yet, in the explanation, we're talking about that the support supplement had to go up because of the amount of deputy coroners that were called out. You would think, in theory, that would also make the amount of autopsies probably go up in theory, but that wasn't the case here. And like I said, I'm not saying that that's wrong. That just was brought to my attention. If you look under the Correctional Institute Misery Fund, am I pronouncing that right?
Commissary.
Commissary. It said budgeted increase to meet additional expenditures for inmates. That's actually family and friends that are contributing there. So if you look at that at face value, it makes it look like we're having to supplement more expenditures for the inmates, and that's not the case, correct?
Correct. That fund really doesn't. The Correction Institute manages that account and handles all of the funding that's coming in for the inmates and all the money that's paid out through the commissary fund.
There were several things I just think from a budgeting standpoint, and I'll just highlight a couple of them that we need to look at. I know workman's comp is going to fluctuate. If we look at IT, they had just a little bit of overtime, and my concern is not that they had overtime, but the explanation that you gave was essentially there's certain things that they need to do that the system, although the employees need to be logged out. So in my mind, and I'm not trying to place more money in the budget, but that would make sense that in the future we may need to have a little bit of money in a line item so that they can do those type things. That just seems only from an operational standpoint because there was nothing budgeted in that line. Same thing for training there as well. I would think with the evolving world that we live in with technology, we probably need to put some money in training because they spend a little money that we did not budget for there as well. The court reporter fees, this is something I had brought up before. nearly 50% of that budget was doubled, or 50% of the budget. So we went from 116,500 and went up 66,800. Here again, that's not saying something's wrong. It's just then when we looked at the current FY20, we're down there. So I'm just trying to figure out what is going on that we went up 50% of the original budget and making an amendment, but then we're down in FY20, and I think you agree, just trying to figure out what exactly is that number telling you.
I've got some information from the clerk of court about cases, but according to what I understand there, a lot of the court reporting fees depends on what kind of cases and how many hearings are held per case, and there's a lot that goes into it that I don't know, just not knowing how the judicial system works.
I know we did some equipment purchases, we did some vehicle purchases that we had been taking out of SPLOS, but these are some amendments that we're having to make here. So I know, like the Sheriff's Department, they have a rotation plan. I think every few years, talking to their chief deputy, they try to rotate out so many vehicles. And so technically we're not budgeting for that in our own fleet. And so that may be something from a budget standpoint that we want to look at as well. But those are just the highlights that I think if we look at the amendments, it's telling us something about that we need to pay attention to in future budgeting, and see if any of this was reflected in what we did in FY20 when we planned in.
I agree.
Thank you.
Okay, I was wanting to put 9.1 and 9.2 on the consent agenda for Tuesday. Are there any further questions for Alicia at this time? All right, we will go to business session. I am checking this off, so I'm making sure I'm not leaving anything off. Business session, Betty Kaysen has resigned from the Region 6 Behavioral Health and Development Disabilities Planning Board. It is her recommendation that we appoint Judge Edie Haney to her replacement. And if y'all are okay with that, I'll place that on a consent agenda. And at this time, we do not go into 11, which is zoning. So I would like to recommend the following items we put on the consent agenda. That would be 9.1, 9.2, which is the financial recap and the budget amendment, 9.3, which is our environmental facilities agreement with the Carroll County Water Authority, 10.1, which is the appointment for Region 6, and 10.2, which is the Streetlight Special Tax District establishment. So that would leave us 1 through 8, and then zoning for Tuesday.
Madam Chairman, I would ask that 9.1 be removed, just simply because I have not had the time. We received this packet at 6 p.m. on Tuesday, and there was so much in the budget amendment, I have not had the time to properly go through 9.1.
Okay. And then we'll do 9.2, 9.3, 10.1, and 10.2. We'll leave 1 through 8, 9.1, and then our zoning for Tuesday.